I am here with Brian Arreola, who plays the tenor role in What the Horse Eats. How are you doing today, Brian?
Very well, thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. All right, I'm going to jump in with the first question that I have for you today. It's a pretty general one. What excites you about performing this new opera?
Well, the music is incredible. Professor Phan, is a modern composer who hybridizes the Western opera tradition of really um, complex formal structures and amazing harmonies and adventuresome use of tonalities and timbres within the orchestra. This is a small orchestra, obviously. He hybridizes all of those things with the music and idioms from his home country. And so it's when you hear one of his pieces, it's distinctly him. It's distinctly 20th century or 21st century, modern. But it has an element of that sort of universal quality that all folk music tends to have, of sounding somewhat maybe nostalgic, very honest in terms of like the way the melodies are uttered. And so all of that is really exciting as a singer because what it means is that we get lines that are singable lines because of that sort of grounding in the folk idiom. But at the same time, it's very modern music, and it doesn't feel like we're just rehashing the same old, from the bel canto or the verismo traditions. So it's really exciting to be doing new opera that is singable, tuneful opera.
Are there any challenges that you find particularly interesting in the music or in your part that you can talk about?
Well, I mean, of course, because it is new music, and composers are always looking to sort of push the boundaries and make sure that we're not just massaging the ears with intervals and harmonies that we've heard over and over and over again. Professor Phan breaks his melodies kind of by octave. So like you'd expect something da da da. He won't do that. He won't say do re mi. He'll say do re mi. There's like these, and then that's not at all from the show. That's just like a made up example. But like what I've noticed as I'm trying to learn these things, if I just transpose things by octaves, then I start to see a much simpler melodic structure. And it's hard to know like how much work the audience's ear does in creating those transpositions in real time, as opposed to are they just hearing a lot of very captivating intervals happening in sequence. I think it's our job as the singer to try to make everything sound, yes, as your gesture, beautiful, flowing, the limpid sort of bel canto line. Unless there's a textual or dramatic reason that the character is supposed to sound sort of agitated or something like that's it's showing their emotional state.
Well, that was actually what I was going to ask you next. What can you tell us about your character and how the music evokes that particular persona?
Sure. I mean, he's a dedicated family man, first time father, has a son, and of course the entire country is in this situation of being occupied and starving because of the occupation. So he's really he has nowhere to turn. He has no good options for finding sustenance for his child and his wife. Um, he breaks out into these little mini arias kind of interspersed throughout the action where he really, just like opera tends to do, he stops, takes stock of the situation, really exposes his emotions for the audience to go through those cathartic emotions with him. um, he's got an amazing scene with the Japanese occupying captain of the army, where they talk about like what does it take to care for a horse, and you see that he's got a real passion for his job. Actually, he knows all about it. He honors horses, believes that they possess the highest quality of all animals. He believes you have to treat it as you would treat your child. So there's obviously a lot of symbolic there between the two men, who has the child and who has the sort of the surrogate or the would-be metaphorical child. And then he has a great scene with his wife where they're talking about how desperate they really are, and she says, you don't need to take this route of stealing feed from the horse. That's going to shame us. It's going to get us killed. It's embracing death. I will work harder. I will dig for roots, and I will climb up the mountains to like get stuff to sustain my body to make milk for the child. Um, and he's basically like, no, you've already pushed it as far as you can go. This, we are all starving. This is what we have to do. I'm going to sacrifice my honor, my family name, my face, and we're going to save the child that way. Um, yeah, so I mean, it's quite an extreme circumstance and extreme emotional journey that he goes through, which is pretty standard actually for opera, and works really well.
Yeah. What in the specifically in the score, are there any things that show his desperation or
Uh,
his commitment to that?
sure, sure, sure. Professor Phan really knows like opera. He's already had one of his grand operas premiered by the IU Opera Theater, and it was amazing. Um, he knows the conventions and the traditions of like what the Western art composers have used to show. So these things function almost as like signals to the audience. So like just even a high note, right, is like carries significance. His approach to the high notes, to kind of circle back to your question about like what's exciting or challenging, his approach can be very, very challenging in that he doesn't necessarily always lead it in that Italianate stepwise line. Um, Probably the best example is at the end of the duet with the wife character. They're saying with dented souls, they're gonna go into this plan and just accept their fate. And he writes a series of pitches: B, D, B flat, which basically minus the fifth, that outlines a B minor with a major seven tonality or chord, which is very, very dissonant. Ba, ba, ba. It's almost the average American, I think, would have a harmony in that in their ear from like kind of the spy like dramatic dun da da, right? So that's on the syllables: with dented souls, with dented souls, with dented souls. But it's, of course, it's in the higher octave. Both the soprano and I, with dented souls. We just do that over and over, and you really see that they're like desperate, 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 and hitting that note over and over.
Wow. That
Mm.
just gave me chills just hearing you describe that. I can't wait to
Yeah,
hear
it's
it.
very intense. It's both a great sort of musical coup and a huge technical challenge for this soprano and
Yeah.
tenor.
Oh, definitely.
Mhm.
Oh, that sounds so incredible. Do you have any closing thoughts about the show or just what you want the audiences to know going into this?
I mean, besides, we talked a lot about kind of opera and like the voice and what it does. I think I'm just really excited to get with the instrumentalists also. This has a really uh, uh, colorful and imaginative and quite challenging orchestral part. And I can't wait to hear those instruments, supporting our voices and doing all their own stuff. I think it's going to be, it's not lacking for like sort of the grand orchestra that opera sometimes has. It's going to sound like an amazingly modern, evocative chamber piece. I'm really excited about that part too.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
You bet. It was my pleasure. Thank you, Jamie.